Hi and good evening. Thank you for watching. I'm Shakil 5858. I am Buddham. Now the latest headlines from world channels and news agencies.
Purported leak. Download the ABC News app.
Urgent investigations into a suspected poisoning at a Fiji resort that put 7 tourists in hospital.
This is the only reported case of its kind that we've experienced in memory, and we have acted immediately to try and discover the cause of what made the guests fall ill.
Australia in the grip of an early summer heatwave, a cool change expected now in Adelaide before moving east this evening. The released Bali 9 members bunked down in a former quarantine facility in Darwin on their return to Australia. And Australia gets some early wickets before rain delays frustrate day 3 in Brisbane. Hello and welcome to ABC News. I'm Joe O'Brien. 2 of the Australians hospitalised after consuming cocktails at a resort in Fiji are in a stable condition and on their way home. 4 Australians are among 7 people to get.
Tonight, the high-tech equipment being rushed in to track those mysterious drones on the East Coast, while out west, an extremely rare and destructive California tornado. Drones spotting radar devices like these now heading to New York as lawmakers demand answers. What is flying overhead?
Why do we have more questions than answers?
2 people arrested for flying drones near Boston's airport, and the FAA now warning of a new danger in the skies that could blind pilots. That rare tornado in California tearing across a busy street. Cars flipped. Look at that. Trees ripped down, all as the Midwest is thawing out from a deadly ice storm that sent cars like this one spinning.
What of my car?
Our new reporting that a grand jury could hand down an indictment of the CEO murder suspect within days. Will he still fight extradition? 2 oil tankers, both split in 2. The race now to stop an environmental disaster. Amazon facing a strike threat from some workers with just days until Christmas. What it could mean for your holiday shopping. E-bike battery dangers. Our up-close look at how quickly they can explode and how to keep your family safe. And the show must go on. The community devastated by Hurricane Helene coming together to put on this year's Nutcracker.
This is NBC Nightly News with Hallie Jackson.
Good evening.
Tonight, communities are on edge with more suspicious sightings in the night sky, what federal officials are now saying, and the resources they're sending to local communities. State and local officials across the Northeast are demanding answers and more high-tech resources. An airport outside New York City shut down for a time this weekend after reported drone sightings. The arrests overnight by Boston authorities. 2 men accused of operating a drone near Logan Airport. Thousands of tips flooding in, but how many are really drones? And are some planes or helicopters? What we're learning tonight. The alleged killer of healthcare CEO Brian Thompson prepares his defense. Who's representing him? And will Luigi Mangione waive his right to fight extradition to New York City? What that could mean for the timeline of the case. Millions are on alert tonight for snow and rain that's sweeping through the I-95 corridor. Icy roads possible from the mid-Atlantic to the Northeast and in the West. A rare tornado smashes through a Northern California parking lot. Several people were hurt. Trees and power lines were down. Cars overturned. What's in store for this week? Our weather team standing by. The president-elect offers a public sign of support for some of his embattled nominees while attending the Army-Navy game. And what a new poll suggests about public confidence in Trump's picks overall. In Syria, 1 week after Assad's fall, Israel ramps up airstrikes and the Syrian rebels consolidate power. James Longman reports from Syria tonight. 2 Russian oil tankers carrying thousands of tons of oil are badly damaged off of Crimea. One can be seen breaking in two before sinking. Houston police search for suspects in a deadly mass shooting at a teen pop-up party. What police are saying about this popular social media trend. Actor Jamie Foxx is recovering after being hit by a glass at a Beverly Hills restaurant. What he's saying about that incident. The emotional moments. Colorado star Travis Hunter brings home the Heisman. What he told GMA about Coach Prime. And the legendary Dick Van Dyke. Why he's thankful tonight for his neighbors.
From ABC News World Headquarters in New York, this is World News Tonight.
Good evening, everyone. Thanks so much for joining us on this busy Sunday. I'm Lindsay Davis. We begin tonight with the federal government deploying additional resources.
Tonight, back to New York. Why the suspected CEO killer may stop fighting his extradition from Pennsylvania this week.
I'm Allie Bauman with new details about Luigi Mangione's time behind bars and his dark fandom.
Also tonight, mystery drones. Officials pledge new resources into the sightings.
I want to assure the American public that we are on it.
Plus, Trump transition.
I'm Nicole Killian in West Palm Beach, Florida, with the fight ahead for some of the president-elect's most controversial picks.
Syria scrambles 1 week after the fall of Assad.
I'm Imtiaz Tayeb in the Syrian capital Damascus, where the country's minorities are cautiously optimistic about the future.
I'm Holly Williams in eastern Syria, where there are fears that ISIS could use the collapse of the regime to try and stage a comeback.
Holiday rush. It begins this week. What you need to know before hitting the road or flying out.
What keeps, do you think, driving these record number of people?
You know, I actually believe coming out of COVID created a new urgency, a new appreciation for travel and experience.
And later, a Christmas tradition from across the pond.
Delivering holiday cheer. I'm Tina Kraus with the Clever Crafters, giving the UK's famous red mailboxes a festive makeover.
This is the CBS Weekend News from New York with Jerika.
I'm Dr. Kyra Bobinet. I'm the author of Unstoppable Brain, and what I do is I translate neuroscience into behavior change for everyday life. It's in the zeitgeist that people have really difficulty with their attention span. They feel brain foggy. They feel, less concentration for what they want to do. They can't do deep work. And then there's also this epidemic of loneliness layer that has been kind of sitting on the heels of this because we can't really focus on anything, including relationship building. There's another area of our brains, which nobody knows about yet, that is the master control of our behavior. So this is the part that says you will or you won't, I can or I can't. And it's called the habenula. It is at the heart of all of this. It's the heart of when you know you should be doing something and you do this other thing instead, like doom scrolling. And what happens with the habenula is that when it gets activated, it then kills our motivation to do good things. It kills our motivation to try. And so that stuckness that people feel with brain rot is really the habenula going on because it's been shown to go on when you doom scroll. It's been shown to be triggered by those kinds of activities. And so when we're online too much and we don't find what we need or we feel dissatisfied, even in a tiny way, if this activates, then we're not going to feel motivated to do anything for ourselves for the rest of the day. If you're addicted to social media or online behavior is getting, addictive for you, this part of your brain is going to make it very, very painful to stop. Humans are very resilient. Once we know the truth about our bodies, then we can do something about it. And the thing that really tugs at my heart is that because nobody knows about this, then they blame themselves and they fall further down into feeling badly. And that's unnecessary. I'm hoping that by understanding our bodies, understanding that we have this little tripwire for our motivation in our brain, that we can live in a more empowered and intentional way.
Tonight on PBS News Weekend, 1 week since the stunning collapse of the Assad regime, how Syrians are reacting to life with the rebels in charge. Then we explore why women across the country are stocking up on abortion pills. And with 2024 on track to be the hottest year on record, we meet a new generation trying to tackle climate change.
Climate change is here and now, and students need to know not just the stuff about it that is challenging and difficult, but also they need to see how change can happen.
Tonight, surviving a landslide that swept away a BC home.
Terrifying. It doesn't feel real.
It cut off a busy highway, stranding drivers and residents. The rescues and the cleanup from a massive windstorm. Canada's premiers face to face and at odds over Trump's tariff threat.
We have to make sure that we have a position of strength.
Tariffs only hurt Canadian consumers.
Can they unite behind a plan? An Ottawa man charged twice by airlines for one set of checked bags.
For them to just say absolutely, stonewall you and say no is really disappointing.
Why passengers keep getting overcharged for baggage.
From CBC News, this is The National with Ian. On this Sunday night, the cleanup and rescue mission in BC after a deadly storm wreaks havoc, from landslides to fallen trees.
It was a cold, dark night. It was pretty remarkable. It was one of the loudest things I've ever heard.
The response and the devastation on the South Coast. Key changes to mortgage rules take effect. Will they ease the housing crunch or pile on pressure for homebuyers? Plus, why the Liberals' voter-friendly policies aren't improving struggling poll numbers. What's being done to solve the mystery behind thousands of drone sightings in New York and New Jersey? And a holiday tradition with a heartwarming twist.
Whatever we make is more than they had before we started.
How a Winnipeg man's Christmas display is lighting up the lives of children in need.
Global National, reporting tonight.
At least 11 people are dead and dozens more injured after a tropical cyclone hit the French territory of Mayotte in the Indian Ocean. Cyclone Chido is the worst to hit the islands in nearly a century. Electricity, water, and internet are all down. The main hospital and the airport have been heavily damaged. Early this morning, the cyclone reached Mozambique on Africa's mainland. Officials warn millions could be impacted, with nearby countries considering evacuations.
Talks global health and emergencies and Swiss politics and finance.
John Zarakostas, one of the 200 France 24 correspondents around the world.
Hello and a very warm welcome to you. You're watching Daybreak here on France 24. These are the headlines. Hundreds, if not thousands of people fear dead in the French island of Mayotte. France rushing to get rescue workers and supplies in, but efforts hampered by the extent of damage done by Cyclone Chido, which wiped out some slums and also hit the airport there. World leaders reach out to rebel leaders in Syria, still technically designated a terrorist organisation, but many in talks now to work together as Syria tries to start to rebuild after well over a decade of war. Our reporters are in Aleppo and bring us the view from there. Wanting to double the Israeli population in the occupied Golan Heights, the government says it will spend $11 million on a project to extend settlements as Israeli troops seize a UN-monitored buffer zone there. Glad you could join us. Well, also coming up, US security services, they say they don't appear to be an issue for public safety and that they're not thought to be a form of foreign interference. But swarms of drones over New Jersey, New York and the East Coast are causing concern. Hundreds, perhaps even thousands of people have been killed on the French island of Mayotte in the Indian Ocean.
Saturday on CNA. This is Asia Now.
Good afternoon. It's 12 p.m. in Singapore and in Hong Kong. It's 9:30 in the morning in New Delhi and 11 o'clock in Jakarta. I'm Teresa Tang. At this hour, South Korea's ruling party leader Han Dong-hoon has announced his resignation in the wake of President Yoon Suk-yeol's impeachment. The move comes as the Constitutional Court meets to begin considering the case against Mr. Yoon. Adjusting to a new normal, students across Syria return to their classrooms a week after rebels overthrew President Bashar al-Assad and his regime. Retail sales in China failing to pick up pace in November, prompting government officials to promise to implement more policies to expand domestic demand.
Approach is to work with other European countries, including with Italy, to go after the criminal gangs.
The Home Secretary in Italy this weekend, trying to learn from Prime Minister Meloni's right-wing coalition government how they got Mediterranean small boat crossings down. Despite election promises to smash the gangs, new figures show more than 21,000 people have been trafficked across the Channel since Labour came to power, up from just over 17,000 in the same period in 2023. Overall this year, almost 35,000 have made the crossing, already more than in 2023, but not on track to surpass the record set in 2022. 13,500 failed asylum seekers have been returned to their home countries since the election, the highest number in 5 years. That might be some positive news for Yvette Cooper, but she's refusing to be drawn on what her targets are.
I think we're being very clear and straight with people about the complexity of this, because the gimmicks did not work. What we had previously was a whole lot of gimmicks. Everybody promised it was going to solve it immediately, and what we're doing is the very serious action.
Earlier
This is DW News, and these are our top stories. Israel is to double the settler population of the occupied Golan Heights, a disputed strip of land along the border with Syria. The Israeli military has moved into a buffer zone separating the two nations and also stepped up attacks on Syrian military installations. Authorities in the overseas French territory of Mayotte fear hundreds of people have been killed by the most destructive cyclone in nearly a century. The small island off the East African coast was already France's poorest overseas region. Now the storm has raised fears about the humanitarian situation. And German Chancellor Olaf Scholz is facing a confidence vote in a few hours that will likely pave the way for new elections in February. Scholz called the vote following the collapse of his governing coalition. Polls predict that his Social Democrats will lose to the Conservatives. This is DW News from Berlin. You'll find lots more news on our website at dw.com.
Two UN schools in Gaza sheltering displaced families are hit by Israeli airstrikes. The attacks have killed more than 60 people. Hello and welcome to TRT World, live from Istanbul. I'm Efnan Han, also ahead on the program. Israeli jets strike more military sites across Syria as it moves to expand illegal settlements in the occupied Golan Heights. Piecing together the stories of the missing, we talk to Syrian families as more details emerge of the horrors of the Assad regime. And thousands feared dead after Cyclone Chido smashes into the Indian Ocean island of Mayotte.
Good morning. It's 6 o'clock on today's show. The worst storm to hit the Indian Ocean in almost a century.
Plus, MPs call on the courts to lift an order preventing the Chinese spy linked to Prince Andrew from being named.
Plenty to come on Monday, the 16th of December. Close to 1,000 people feared dead in a cyclone on the French island of Mayotte. Also ahead, after months of evidence, we'll hear the final statements in the Post Office inquiry into one of the biggest miscarriages of justice in British history. Sky News hears calls for trials to go ahead without juries to help clear the backlog in courts. And Brussels sprouts, why our favourite festive veg is 25% bigger this year. Plus, Manchester United come from a goal down to turn the tables on rivals Manchester City in the Premier League. A very good morning to you. There is a major rescue operation underway on the French island of Mayotte in the Indian Ocean.
Thank you very much. The top stories this hour. The UK has had diplomatic contact with the rebel group that toppled Bashar al-Assad's regime, says David Lammy, as he announced £50 million of humanitarian aid for vulnerable Syrians across the Middle East. It comes as the Foreign Office says the emergency support will be delivered through the UN and NGO agencies to the people in the country, as well as to refugees in Lebanon and Jordan. Britain yesterday joined talks in Aqaba, hosted by Jordan and attended by ministers and delegates. £30 million will go to Syria for food, shelter and emergency healthcare, while £10 million will go to World Food Programme in Lebanon and £10 million to the UN's refugee agency in Jordan.
We want to see a Syrian-led and a Syrian-owned future, and we want one that is representative and inclusive. That is what partners in the region and allies, close allies, signed up to yesterday, and that will be encouraging.
In other news, close to 1,000 people may have been killed after Cyclone Chido hit the French territory of Mayotte in the Indian Ocean. The search for survivors continued today. It's feared the eventual death toll could continue to rise once the damage is fully assessed. Entire settlements were flattened when the cyclone brought wind speeds of more than 225 kilometres per hour. The island. And a convicted terrorist is reportedly suing a pub called the Saracen's Head Inn, saying he was deeply offended by its sign. It's being reported in The Sun that 60-year-old Khalid Bakr claims the depiction of a bearded Arab incites violence, despite him previously being jailed for preparing jihadi propaganda. He also reportedly claims it's racist and wants £1,850 from the landlord of the historic inn at Amersham and plans to take on 30 more with the same name if successful. But publican Robbie Hayes called it a complete joke, adding that the pub has been called the Saracen's Head for 500 years.
As the fighting in the Eastern Democratic Republic of Congo rages on, attempts to end the unrest don't appear to be progressing. On Sunday, leaders of the DRC and Rwanda were supposed to meet in order to discuss halting the conflict. But according to a representative from the DRC, the talks almost instantaneously hit a deadlock and were called off. According to the DRC, it comes after a Rwandan request that the DRC hold direct talks with M23. It's a crucial facility for Libya's energy sector. But some of the Zawiya refinery's reservoirs were seriously damaged as a result of ongoing face-offs between armed groups nearby. This has led Libya's National Oil Corporation to declare force majeure. Situated in the west of the country, the refinery processes crude oil from the Shahara field, which is among the country's largest. Producing diesel, gasoline, jet fuel and LPG, it's essential for domestic fuel supply. The refinery contributes to
Guineas. They were outraged by an announcement by the junta,
resulting considerable financial losses for the country as it has to import fuel.
Opposition groups in Guinea say they're outraged by an announcement by the junta that the transition to democratic rule will extend beyond the end of the year. A spokesperson for the ruling authority said conditions for the transitional period to end have not yet been met. In negotiations with the regional group ECOWAS, the junta, which seized power in a coup in 2021, had promised to return to elections and civilian rule within 2 years. In July, it presented citizens with a draft of a new constitution, which would reduce and set presidential term limits. It would also potentially allow current military leader Mamadi Doumbouya to participate in the next presidential election. But the promised referendum on the document, expected to pave the way for a return to constitutional rule, is yet to take place, and the junta has shown little sign of moving to organise an election. A committee of Guinean opposition groups, civil society organisations and activists known as the Force Vive has said it.
Thank you for sparing your precious time. This is Amir Shakil. Have a good life. Bye-bye.